but I do recall the feeling of having, I got my big break, and that morning and waking up and feeling a great sense of relief more than anything, because I felt like, oh man, I felt kind of reassured, like, oh, I did it. This was, There was a lot of doubt in my mind up until then. If I was, I had dropped out of school, I chased this girl, I put all my eggs into this basket, and I was terrified.
Welcome to the Learn Squared podcast. Today's guest is the extraordinary Patrick O'Keefe. Best known as an art director on the Oscar-winning and webtastic Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Patrick's career has also seen him lend his creative talent to the fields of advertising, games, television, and now into teaching as a Learn Squared instructor. In this episode, we get a candid and honest look into Patrick's epic journey, which saw him start out as an aspiring artist through to the Academy Award-winning art director that we know him as today. We also get a peek into the ambitions behind his Learn Squared course, 2D sequence illustration, and how it will greatly benefit those wanting to forge a career in films. I can honestly say that after speaking with Patrick, I was left truly inspired and motivated, and I hope that will be the case for you too. I'm your host, Dhanda. Let's go. Welcome, Patrick. Do you prefer to be called Patrick, Pat, or anything else?
Patrick's fine. It's funny. I was having a conversation about this last night.
Right.
I have like old professors still call me Pat.
Okay.
My first professors. Generally, everyone calls me Patrick, and then my good buddies back in Toronto. And the closer to Ireland you are, the more Irish you are, the more it starts to become Patty.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So firstly, congratulations on the Learn Squared course. It's pretty amazing. And I know we probably say that about all our courses, but it's gone down really well. And it's something that I'm definitely going to take when I get some time, purely because I can just see how it can benefit my workflow. But yeah, firstly, congratulations on that.
Well, thank you very much.
I guess we can start with a bit about your origin story. So who is Patrick O'Keefe?
Sure. So I'm a Canadian, Toronto-born illustrator and now art director. And I really got started with art I have an older brother, Christopher O'Keefe, who is he's a great designer as well. And when I was young, he's about 5 years older than me. So when I was a little kid, I just sort of like wanted to be my older brother and follow him around everywhere he went. I'd steal his sketchbooks and draw on them and practice and try to be just like him. And he got into doing graffiti and I followed suit. And that's really where like my first sort of like love and application of art beyond just like a sketchbook really started, was doing graffiti, and then kept meeting other graffiti artists throughout the Toronto scene.
Sick.
And like getting up, as they say, more and more around town. And it was really that in high school, I mean, my love for it started when I was really young. There's like a grade 3 graduation book, like at the end of the school year. And it says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's funny because I'm terrible with like the written word. I'm like learning disabled. Okay. And so I wrote, I want to be a cartoon. What I meant was cartoonist, but I couldn't get it right. And I still screw things up like that to this day in my emails.
Interesting.
It's horrendous. So, but it was in high school. I met an art teacher, Mr. McNaughton, and he saw my love for graffiti and stuff, but also was like, you could be a for real artist, and started educating me in what it would take to become an illustrator. And from then on, I still maintained the graffiti, but started to study a little harder. I eventually got into an art college outside of Toronto, Sheridan College. And that's where I started studying illustration, like for real. I eventually met the the other love of my life, my wife, and she's from Toronto, but was going to school in Vancouver, British Columbia, which the distance for somebody like you would be probably like London to Berlin. Canada is huge.
Yeah, definitely.
So, 5-6 hour flight on the other side of the country. We fell in love, and we spent the first year apart as I went back to art school. And as any 20-year-old boy did who was in love, I weighed the idea of my dream art school or smooching my lady. And I promptly dropped out of Sheridan and moved across the country to be with her. And I found an art school in Vancouver called the Emily Carr Institute. And they didn't really have an illustration program at all. So it was really like go into graphic design or something like that and do some painting. And I enrolled and got there. And the first day I walked into a film class by accident, and it was like film production and film design. Mm-hmm. And I just immediately went to the dean's office and was like, that's it, I'm switching. Mm-hmm. I'd rather learn new skills than kind of just keep working on the ones I currently have. And so I ended up studying and finishing my degree in film design. Which is interesting because it gave me all these tools that I wouldn't have gotten in illustration, like set design and cinematography, production design. Mm-hmm. And because I had switched schools, I had like more than enough credit. I was weird. I was like caught in between 2 years of study. And so in my final year, I had a rather light course load, but it enabled me, but I was broke. I was working as a bathroom attendant at an Asian gangster nightclub. Nice. And living off of the tips I would make, which were pretty substantial because people would throw you good cash for you to not to look the other way as they did shady stuff, But that's not the career I had always envisioned.
Can imagine.
Yeah, and so that summer I got a job working as a storyboard artist at an animation studio in Vancouver called Bardell, and as I was heading into my last year of studies, they were all sort of like, why bother? You got a job, kid, just hang out. Mm-hmm. The money's okay, right? It's better than school, right? And I was like, it is, but I've come so far. I got to finish this degree, which is a good lesson for anybody learning, hoping to come study it from abroad or work from abroad in the United States, or even travel to a lot of other countries and work and get a work visa. It's very valuable to have a degree. Besides that, the degree in your arts education isn't super valuable, but moving from country to country, it's a legitimate piece of paper that says, hey, I am an artist in the eyes of the government that from the country I come from. And it really helps you get your degree. So I said, hey, I'm going back to school, but I have such a light course load this last year. Why don't you guys, if you'll help me out, I'll turn this into a co-op opportunity. So I'll actually be doing school. I'll actually be paying my school so I can come work for you and get paid because I had to do them as courses. And they did. And then I had the most wild, crazy last year of college because I was doing my grad film and running back and forth to the animation studio. I'd like go to class in the morning, go to the animation studio, storyboard for 4 hours, head back, go to another class, come back, storyboard, and then head home and do my work.
Yeah.
For school. And I thought I had it all figured out. I was on Easy Street. And this is 2008, and the economic recession was just sort of starting to hit the Vancouver area. It was it still hadn't like gripped the worldwide, but the animation television as overseas business was starting to be affected, and the show was told, hey, we're not going to do a third season, and they were like, we'd love to keep you on. We just don't know what that job is yet. So hang tight and we'll figure it out. And I'm like, man, I got student loans. I got a month before school ends. I got to find something. And Electronic Arts, which is a game developer in Vancouver, I heard from my director of the TV show that they were looking for a concept artist, not a story artist, but a concept artist. And they're also looking for somebody who can do graffiti, because it's the Need for Speed game, and they're doing like an underground game, you know, and they want more authentic street art throughout the game. And I worked like 2 weeks finishing my grad film. I'm storyboarding this TV show, and I'm trying to come up with a portfolio that really showed, like, I'm just drawing cars, driving down streets, and then peppering in the best graffiti I can muster digitally. And I ended up getting the job, and it kind of set the tone for my career, which was
awesome.
I had my last day of work at the animation studio on Friday. I graduated on Saturday. I took Sunday off, and on Monday I went into my new job.
Wow. How did that feel? Like, was that almost like around that time? Was it almost relief, or was it like, I kind of need a break, but I got to do this? What was your like thought process at that time? Or I guess what I'm really asking, what was your anxiety levels at that time like, or insecurity? Because obviously you just mentioned with the financial crash and things like that. What was your like mindset in terms of your career?
Yeah, it was, so I got the job in about, it would have been May, and then the real crash happened in September, but you could see things were happening. It started that the animation industry was starting to tighten up. And I felt like this was my big break. You know, I wasn't aware of the impending crash that was coming. And it's actually, we could get into that topic because it may very well parallel what's about to happen now.
Definitely.
But I do recall the feeling of having, I got my big break, and that morning and waking up and feeling a great sense of relief, more than anything, because I felt like, oh man, I felt kind of reassured, like, oh, I did it. This was, there was a lot of doubt in my mind up until then. If I was, you know, I dropped out of school, I chased this girl, I put all my eggs into this basket, and I was terrified. I had a sizable student loan, nothing an American student would deal with, but something, you know,
still a fair bit,
and no real financial support in my life. And I was out on my own. I was across the country, right? It almost felt like a different country moving that far. And so I was very much like, what, you know, am I going to be back doing that bathroom job? And I'm not even kidding. I would still take the odd shift.
Yes.
Because if it was if they were having a big party, you might make a couple $100 that night. So I needed the cash.
Yeah.
But I remember waking up that morning and I can picture it now. The sun was coming into the windows, and I was just like, okay, it's good. I think it's going to be okay. Like this, you did the right thing.
Yeah.
You bet on yourself, and it worked out.
Yeah.
Now to the question of, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's okay.
I was going to say, now the other side to that question. So we have a great summer, new gig. I'm working on Need for Speed. My art director is a guy named Wilson Tang, who worked on like Tech on Concrete and AI, and he's an incredible architect. I'm learning so much. I'm having a blast meeting everybody. AI. Yes, yeah. Nice. Wilson Tang, you should. We call him Wu Tang. Check him out. He's still a mentor and a friend. I've been blessed with great mentors throughout my entire career.
That's awesome, man.
So I'm having a blast. I'm learning everything. I'm mixing it up in EA, and then September rolls around, and the financial crash is huge. Like it shocks the world, you know? And then I spent the next 4 or 5 years watching studios downsize around me. EA Vancouver, so this was EA Black Box Vancouver, told me, you know, we're not going to be able to, we might be able to renew your contract, but we're still working on it. But, and this is another person who was a bit of like a fairy godmother in my career. There's an artist named Neela Rodis, who was like an artist on Empire Strikes Back.
Sick.
You know, I get called up to like the top floor of EA. Somebody wants to speak with you. And I go and meet this, he's like a Yoda-like figure. I'm not, you know,
Okay.
It's weird, but he is. And,
does he speak like him in terms of the way he structures sentences as well?
No, but he's just like this little guy, and he's got this soft voice, and it's, I don't know, that presence around him. You certainly are waiting for him to speak first.
Yes.
And Nilo is like, oh man, I've been watching you. I love your work. Not sure if you know this, but like EA Montreal is very interested in working with you. They have and they're doing a Need for Speed game for the Wii that's going to be like something totally different. Mm-hmm. We want it to be something totally different. It's like the whole thing is going to be like a blank canvas, and as you drive around, you draw graffiti on everything. And I was like, hey, that's cool, man. But I live in Vancouver. You know, like I got my girl here. I got my buddies here. I just graduated. Like it's been 6 months or something since I graduated. I just don't know. And he's like, I really think you should consider this. And I had just kind of heard that the contract in Vancouver, you know, don't worry, we're working on it, but we're just not sure. And you know, some of the older cats would pull me aside and be like, I'm a little nervous, to be honest. And so him and a manager there were like, you should really take the job in Montreal. And I was like, okay. And I have family in Montreal, actually. That's where my mother's from, and my uncle's there. My Uncle Jacques and my cousins are all there. And I used to love going there as a kid whenever we could. And actually, over that summer, we had done a little family reunion, and I was like, damn, Montreal's so cool. And it's nice. I could take the train to Toronto and be with my family. And so I was like, all right, you know, to hell with it, I'll do it. And I signed the paperwork, and then they were like, cool, you want to celebrate? And I was like, actually, there's like an all hands meeting I have to go to, but let's grab a drink after work. And I go into the all hands meeting, and they're like, we're shutting down EA Black Box Vancouver. We'll find transitions to everybody. And I was like, oh, no wonder they were pressuring me to take the gig, because they really believed in me and knew my situation. And that was incredible. And that's
really good.
And then I got to EA Montreal, and for the next couple of years, I just watched studios, and this is not to scare everybody out there, but I definitely just watched studios downsize around me. Like, and my next like big break actually came through one of those downsizes. The studio just got ravaged one quarter.
Wow.
And basically, I remember going to work, and my buddy texted me being like, hey, I think my key card didn't work. I'm pretty sure I'm fired. And you know, it sounds callous, cavalier now, but that's the type of joke people make whenever your key card doesn't work to get in the building. It's like, you'll pat your buddy on the back and say, well, I'll see you at the pub.
Yeah.
Best tell the wife. Let her down soft. And so I get there, and my key card doesn't work either. An hour later, this is my buddy, you know, Frederick Lavoie, you know, good East Coast Canadian Frenchman. And my key card doesn't work. And I'm like, oh, that's strange. What are the odds that both? So there must be something with the power, you know, the building lost power.
Okay. Yeah.
And I get up there, and it is a bloodbath. People are packing their stuff up, and you sit in these cubicles of 4, these nice big cubicles of 4, and your manager would walk up, the studio manager would walk up and like walk into the cube of 4, and there's 4 of you, and you'd all turn, and nobody's working. They're all just chatting, and turn-in should be like, you know, Pierre or Fred or Justin, whoever. And that person would just be like, oh man. And they'd go walk to the room, and then 20 minutes later they'd come back and they'd pick up their coat. And there was a pub right next door, the old Dublin.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, I'll see you guys there. And there was about 3 hours of that, it seemed. It felt like a lifetime. And then the studio was down to like 20% capacity, and we all got called in the room. And we were all like, oh, I guess they're just going to line us up and see, shoot the one bullet and see how many it'll penetrate. We'll just mass fire the rest of us. Maybe we don't get the same compensation package. And they were like, you're all safe, and the room, like there was not enough people to fill the room left, and they're like, don't worry, you guys are all safe. Everybody, they're like, it was a Thursday, I think. And they're like, take tomorrow off. The rest of the day is done. It's like lunch. And they're like, go to the pub. Everyone's at the pub. Go to the pub. Just, don't. They were like, don't gloat. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Go buy somebody a drink. And you get to the pub and everybody is just out of their minds drunk, because it was a big drinking crew to begin with.
Okay.
And now they've been sequestered to the pub before lunch and are just rip roaring drunk. So it was a good send off. It was almost like a wake.
Oh my God.
And so I got pretty, I'm 2-3 pints in, and drinking with a bunch of guys from Blackpool, if you believe that. Tangerines or whatever. That's their team. And anyways, I got a call to go back into the studio. Some version of this story is true. And it's a call from EA San Francisco, Visceral Games. And we're going to start making games with them. We're going to be their like outsourced studio. And they didn't need a concept artist. So they were actually they probably still let me go. But I guess I had a godmother or father somewhere who saved me for another day. And they were like, hey, we have this concept art assignment. We really need to get done. Like, we're way behind. Can you help out? And I did it then, like that night. And they're like, all right, we'll keep the kid and we'll stick with him. And then we started making Dead Space 2.
Sick.
And then while we were making 2, halfway through, I just, I got this feeling like, I don't know if the studio is really going to continue to survive in this way. And I got this kind of feeling in my gut, the same kind of one I had in Vancouver, where I was just like, I just don't know if I believe everything like that's being said, or people aren't being honest with themselves about the stability of the project. And we're still kind of recovering off of, it's like probably 2011 now. There's still the recession cut was very deep. It took years to recover. And so halfway through, I kind of like, demand is a strong word, but I've very much impressed upon the people there that, if you want me to finish the game, what I want to do is move to San Francisco. And one of my fairy godfathers, an Irishman, Dominic, every time he'd come up to Montreal to hang out, we would to work. I mean, he was the COO or whatever of the studio, like head of operations. We'd end up getting dinner for some reason. We just became buddies right away.
Nice.
And he became close with my wife, or my girlfriend at the time, and we'd been together forever now, and 6 or 7 years. And he was like, okay, we got it actually figured out. We got your visa situation figured out if you want to come down to San Francisco. And my wife had already kind of started my girlfriend had already started looking for jobs. There's spoilers already in this conversation, but he was like, and I got you, and don't worry, we got your wife a visa. And I was like, I'm not married. Oh, I see what you did there. And so we got shotgun married real quick so she could be part of my visa. And then, we took the train back to Toronto, got married there. And then about about a month later, we were heading to San Francisco with just like a bag of clothes and a bag of, tossed our cats in the bag and just hopped on a plane down to San Francisco.
How did that feel like? That move, was it excitement, or was it, again, like you mentioned before, was like when you had that initial uncertainty of like, should I make the move? I'm kind of like settled where I am.
It's a great question. Yeah.
So did you kind of like learn from the previous ones that every time kind of this has happened, it's kind of been okay?
I definitely do never feel like it's okay. I'm highly skeptical of the decision, but usually there's sort of two types of decisions. Either I have to decide between A and B, or I've long since agreed on C, and I'm just going through the motions. And that's moving to California was definitely something I had always wanted to do. When I left Vancouver, a very good friend of mine who is now and always was a ridiculously talented cinematographer, a man named Chase Irvin, had moved right down to LA, and I'd go visit him often. So I really wanted to get to California, but San Francisco was the only option for me with a visa.
Yeah.
Let me clear my throat here.
That's okay.
And so this was part of the big plan, and EA could get me down there because I don't have any American citizenship or anything like that. I needed the visa, and I kind of needed one for my wife as well if I were to pull this whole move off. And so there was a big sense of like relief again. The plan is paid off, you know. And I kind of encourage people to, if there's one bit of wisdom I have that's not just art based, it's like make plans only for the fact that if you pull them off, you feel like it's the end of Ocean's 11 or something. Like you just heisted the world because you got what you wanted out of the deal. Yeah, I can
definitely relate to that. In terms of like decision making, in terms of a few parallels compared to yourself, but up until probably about 4 years ago, my career stalled purely because I didn't take those jumps. And I was, again, very skeptical. I was like, should I play it safe? And I guess I didn't trust myself at that point as well. But again, up until about 4 years ago, decided to finally take that jump. Again, like similarities to yourself. I can, like you, perfect example, like the end of Ocean's 11. Once it pulls off, it's like, wow, it worked.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh man, I did it. And you only get that sense of, or I personally believe you only get that sense of accomplishment from the plot and the planning that it takes to pull it off, you know?
Yeah.
If it just happened right away, if you got it right away, you'd be like, oh, this is great. This is what I wanted. But there's this multi-tier planning of, okay, I'm going to keep working really, really hard so I become invaluable for the team, and then keep chatting it up with the San Francisco guys, how much I want to be down there. And then keep working from home you start working from home from EA Montreal. So I can show everybody that, you know, I don't necessarily have to be in Montreal to pull this job off and stuff like that. And so when you pull it off, there's a great sense of relief, but a bit of exhaustion as well, because you're gambling a bit, you know? But then we get to San Francisco, and if there's, you know, I can totally relate to the whole, and I'm going to butcher it now, but the whole story of like the conqueror of worlds, you know, you get to the top of one mountain just to see the bigger mountain, you know, and I would weep one day when there are no more mountains to climb because you get a couple weeks of sitting in San Francisco being like, you did it, buddy. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, so what's the next plan?
What's the next?
Excuse me. What's our next caper? You know, and maybe it goes back to being a graffiti artist, because I used to write graffiti with a guy named Caper, and he was always sort of like, where's the next piece? As soon as we were done, you grab your photos, you feel cool for a day or two, and then you're like, all right, where are we going next? And so then I got into San Francisco, and I guess we'll just keep going until current day, which is me sitting in my apartment during lockdown. I get to San Francisco and it's fantastic. I'm learning a lot. There's an incredible team of concept artists there. We make Dead Space 3. We make a Battlefield game. And the whole time I'm going through, I have a visa that is tied to a company.
Okay.
It was part of, I got a very obscure visa. I'd worked for EA long enough. There's a little tip for all you international artists out there. I had worked for EA long enough internationally. And so there was a visa called the L visa, which is an intercompany transfer visa. And it's basically saying, the company is saying, hey, we've got this candidate, this employee who's been working internationally, and we would like to bring them home to the home office now. And there's a provision in there, and this is why I had to get married, that because they're moving an employee, their wife and even kids get not just visas, but work visas, which is very rare to happen. If on most visas, if you were to come to the States, your wife might get a visa to be there, but it doesn't mean she can work there, or your husband, he can work there. And so, I can't leave EA. That it's the visa and my wife's visa are both tied to EA. If I got fired or I quit, we would both lose our ability to work. And so I'm now, okay, my next scheme is make myself an invaluable member of the team that they cannot, everybody's replaceable, but you try to make yourself as valued as possible. And start hammering on those people that I just begged to move me to San Francisco to get me a green card. And once again, my very godfather, Dominic Regan, he helped push for that. It was great to have like another immigrant in my corner, I guess.
Yeah.
And so he pushed for that. And within, I think it was like 5 years, I managed to get a green card. And then as that was happening, of course, nothing else is static in life. The studio was changing again. And a lot of the leadership that had brought me on had left. And that seemed like I was like, okay, I'm about to get the green card. I'll have it in about a year. A lot of the people I enjoyed working with, people like Alexander Muscat and Ian Millum, who is an incredible art director and now a great friend. They had all moved on to other jobs for whatever reasons. Guys like Ben Winot, the guys who really like started Dead Space, who I just thought were all geniuses, had moved on. And so I was like, cool, that sucks because they're all gone and I'd love to be working with them. That's who I'm here for. But on the other hand, I don't feel like I owe anybody. Everybody's new. There's been a changing of the guards. Even Dom Regan's gone. I could leave in the night and nobody would totally notice. There'd be no ill will. Yeah. But then the announcement came that, we're actually going to be making a Star Wars video game and working with Lucasfilm. And I was like, oh man, I really want to see where this goes, because my ultimate goal was to never really make video games, but I want to make movies. And I was like, oh, what an opportunity to make this game and then do my thing, make yourself as valuable as possible and then try to transition to your next goal.
Just to touch on that topic, sorry.
Sure.
When you refer to, like, say, make yourself valuable, how would you quantify that? Is that just simply attitude and obviously quality work, or are there other factors and ingredients to that?
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly it, but we can expand on it. It is the attitude of being, it's about finding the right attitude. And I think there is no right attitude, but there's what works for you. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't somewhat like aggressive and eager to insert myself into situations. If I didn't say that, everybody who I know and has worked with me would probably laugh at me for lying by saying I'm just the nicest guy in the world. I'm eager, like I'm excited. That's really what it comes down to. Sometimes it can be misconstrued as overly ambitious and stuff. And I'm sure there's that's in there, but I'm just excited. Like I can't get enough of this stuff. usually I get like, if I get a pile of work dumped on my desk or a new responsibility, oh, you're going to be in layout department meetings now and working with layout. I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
Nice.
Like, this is the coolest thing ever.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just pumped. And so being very excited, being at times even a bit of a cheerleader for the team, you know, is a position I find myself gravitating towards. And then the work side is just being highly productive. It's not even necessarily a quality of work thing, but it's not a quantity thing either. I don't mean that. It's not just about turning out widgets. It's constantly solving problems through your art. So, oh boy, we got this level design or this vehicle design we just can't figure out, and we've taken a few cracks at it. Let's switch assignments. Here, Patty, you take it. And I'm just like, boom, I've been keeping an eye on it for a while, and I have an idea, and then you execute on it, and you get notes, and you execute on those notes, and you just be fast and efficient and thorough and get your work out and be ready to take any feedback and pivot when you need to. Understanding that it's about making compelling artwork, but that's always just a piece to the greater whole. That is the production you're creating, the product you're working on. And so back to the narrative, it's fantastic. I'm working on the Star Wars game. Amy Hennig has come up from Naughty Dog. She made the Uncharted series, and I'm working with her, and she's brilliant and has a great mind for story. And Doug Chang. I mean, what else do you need? Star Wars. The Star Wars guru.
Are you like a Star Wars fan? Like growing up, were you big into Star Wars, or just,
growing up? It definitely had an impact on me. I think I was of this generation, born mid '80s. When the VHSs came out and they did the THX re-release, that's when like all of our dads or elders kind of were like, "Oh Star Wars." It was just during the.
Did you have the gold box with Darth Vader on the front? That's the one that we had.
I did. Yeah. But I actually had and it's still my favorite cut. And I got to say, now I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I waited till the most recent one dropped on Disney TV and powdered my way through it. But I had the VHS box set that was black with the Vader face on it. And then the Empire Strikes Back one had the Stormtrooper on it. And then I think it was Yoda on Jedi. So even then I had kind of like grown out of Star Wars. It just wasn't really my thing anymore. But I was like, boy, the opportunity to work with Doug and have these bi-weekly reviews where we would drive to Lucas in the Presidio and print up all the artwork still. And he would sit there with a Sharpie and we would just sit around and discuss art for like 2 hours every 2 weeks. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. A masterclass in design, in simplification, in the big statement, just how to organize a painting, while telling a story. It's really where the sequence illustration, it was like a sequence illustration masterclass, stuff, which I tried to pass on, as you absorb a lot of that stuff and that becomes your method. And all along the way, like working with, from Wilson to Nilo, there's a guy named Habib Zagapur who I worked with in Montreal, who's a fantastic artist, to then Ian Millam and Ben Winot, and then working with Doug. It's like each of them has a bit of method that is very attractive to me. And okay, so I'm just going to borrow a little bit of that and digest that and make that part of my method, which is what the class is about. It's not a cure-all, and it's certainly no masterclass. It's sort of just like a window into my process and my method of creating this artwork from everything I've learned.
And let's say if you never had worked with Doug, how do you think your workflow would be impacted on that trajectory, if life went that way? Do you think it would have made much of a difference in hindsight?
I think so. I think a lot. Like I would be remiss. Like I'd be nervous to remove any of those people from the process. And what Doug really taught me, because he's such a fantastic like industrial designer, that I have this process that I talk about in the class where it's composition, design. It's my methods. I start with composition. I move on to the design of the things, the texture, and the practical application of it. Is it metal? Is it wood? What color is it? How weathered is it? The lighting, and then the final touches. Doug really was like, he was great at looking at a sequence illustration and peeling back all the added stuff on top and zeroing right in on the design. And he helped me realize how important the design is there, where you can kind of just keep piling on good looking lighting and nice texturing and all that stuff. Yeah. But for him, it was very much the design, right? And Wilson and Nilo were kind of the same way. And then as a story artist, that's where I really learned composition. And then somebody like Ian, who wasn't doing a lot of art, but was a fantastic art director. He was sort of this whole package guy where it was like, hey, what's the texture of that thing? What is the design of that thing? Because I need to take this painting and then hand it to 5 different departments, and it's got to do something for all of them.
Wow.
And it's those old school guys like Wilson and Nilo and Doug, and another artist who was working with us, John Bell, who was the art director on Back to the Future 2 and Jurassic Park. He was doing artwork with us. These are great designers. He was like a car designer, right? A lot of these guys started their careers. Wilson was an architect. John was a car designer. And like when he was a kid, he was just painting cars for money. They all stem from this, like, it's design first, it's all about the design first, where I think it's all about I think the composition is where you start, but that's just my approach. Yeah. But it was being able to think, excuse me, working with those guys gave me the ability to think design first. Spending a lot of time and going with my buddy Chase Irving, and who's this great cinematographer, and going to film school got me to really think about composition and lighting first. And so, although I had this method and I had friends that were texture artists, and I think a lot of the texture stuff came from still life painting, and doing graffiti for some reason made me very aware of the texture of everything. Wow. All those working with all these different people gave me an appreciation for every one of the steps, which eventually became my method, my ever evolving method. And so it's not like just because a stage is stage 2 or stage 3, it doesn't mean it's lower on the list. You have to approach it like it's all about that. It's just all about that for this stage. And then you move on to the next stage, and now it's just all about the lighting. Lighting's the most important thing in the absolute world. And I'm an artist who only deals in light. And until I'm done the lighting phase, and have to move on to the next phase. And so, I'm working at, I'm living in San Francisco. I actually have my green card. Now I'm doing these, check-ins at LucasArts, incredible team. But I got that feeling in the back of my head one day where I was like, and maybe it's me looking for it, maybe I'm projecting it, but I was like, something isn't right. And I had the feeling the first time in Vancouver, and the studio ended up shutting down. Unfortunately, a huge portion of that Montreal studio ended up shutting down and becoming BioWare Montreal not too long after I left. And so I started to have that feeling again, and I was getting nervous. And so... and this is one of those decisions I look back on it now, and I'm like, I have no idea how I made that decision, because I was walking away from what I would have thought was the dream. But I just sort of up and was like, that's it. I applied for a job as an art director at a game studio. I got to the very final round, and they were like, do you have any questions for us? And I was like, yeah, how long do you think it's going to take to make this video game? Because what I want to do after is go make a movie.
Yeah.
And I think they took that as like, we have two candidates here, somebody who really wants to make a video game and somebody who's doing it on his way to go make movies.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we're going to go with the one who loves video games. And when they called me, they're like, you should go make movies.
Okay.
That's why you didn't
was
get
that
the
like
job.
in a respectful way? Like, this is what you want to do? Okay.
Very respectful. They're like, look, we came down to you and another candidate. You guys are both fantastic. She is more interested in making video games, and that's why we're going to give it to her. And what we really think you should do, if you want some unsolicited advice, is go make those movies. Go, because this shouldn't be, we're not looking for somebody who's just looking at this as a stop along the road, and you shouldn't be delaying your dreams. So that's kind of where it came from. And
that's neat.
I saw that a friend of a friend was looking for background painters for the Big Hero 6 TV show at Disney. And I was actually in the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, California. And I just sent the dude a message on Instagram. I was like, hey, man, you know, I know so-and-so. We're kind of buddies from back in the day. 2 degrees of separation. Would you think, would you be interested in hiring me for the gig? And he saw my work and he responded right away. And he's like, yeah, totally. Let's talk. And I was sitting there then. That was right after the curtain went up. And I was like, I cannot focus on this movie. What did I just decide to do? Am I moving to LA? Like, what is happening? And so it all happened very quickly. I spoke with Disney TV. I actually ended up taking like a pretty good pay cut and all that. But I was like, it's time for me to make this transition. I went into EA. I told them I was leaving and I already had a job, and, you know, I don't really like to negotiate. It was sort of just like, you know, no, there's nothing that can be done. Like, and I appreciate everything that has been done. It's just, it's time for me to switch things up. And a week goes by and I have my going away party at lunch and everyone's having drinks and stuff. And then I sort of just decided to write something nice on, you know, social media, like, thank you so much. It had been 8 years with EA, you know, I just sort of sent my goodbye, and I was unprepared for the flood of emails and from companies and studios, game studios, being like, hey, whoa, what's happening? Like, what are you doing? What's going on? And then I got one email from a production designer named Justin Thompson from Sony. Now, I had met Justin years earlier through a friend of a friend while I was in LA. And he kind of glanced at my work one afternoon and was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And started following me on Twitter. We just kind of became Twitter buddies at best. And when it came time to do my green card, this is before, well, I'm still at EA. The lawyers asked you to do it, to get your green card, the one that I applied for, you need all these letters from people in the industry vouching for you, saying, I never worked with the kid, but I would definitely hire them if I had the opportunity, because they're going to be great for the economy is basically what they're saying. They're not going to go on unemployment or employment insurance. And he wrote one of those letters. You know, the lawyers write the letters and then he adds his bit and signs one. In fact, I have to write one this week for a very promising artist myself. Nice. And I got an email from him saying, and over the years, we'd always tried to work together, but he'd get my early interest on something. I'd be very into it. And then the project falls apart.
Yeah.
Or the project's moving forward, but I've just started this green card process. I can't walk away, and they can't pick up the green card at currently where it's at. And so, or would I be interested? I have to move to LA. Well, I can't because I'd have to lose my visa and all that stuff. And so he just wrote me an email, and it was something to the effect of whatever it said. The message was, this is the timing. And he was like, when you get down to LA, I told him, I got this Disney TV gig. And he's like, cool. When you get to LA, just like come by Sony and let's talk. I'm not in a major rush, but you know, let's do this. This is finally the right time.
What year would this be?
this would have been like 4 years ago, 2016.
Okay.
And I'm flying back and forth from Oakland to Burbank every couple weeks to, pack up my place in Oakland and work at Disney TV. And it was very interesting when I signed the deal with Disney, and this turned out to be very common, but it threw me at the time. I had already quit my job, and the deal finally came in, and there was no contract. It was just like, here's how much we're paying you a week. Okay. And I was like, whoa, there's no like term limits here or anything. Like, how long is the gig? And they're like, well, you're going to do a great job and we're very excited, but we don't really do guaranteed length contracts. Okay. And coming from games, that was strange, because at a game, it's sort of like, it's indefinite, but you're signing a contract. It's like going to work at General Mills or something. Yeah. You work there, General Electric, whatever. And so that I was like, well, I'm in it now. I've already put one foot in the grave. I might as well just hop in. And it ended up working out so well, because about 3 months into the Disney project, I went in and spoke with Sony, and it was just perfect. And they had a film that they wanted to work on. And I had aspirations of continuing to progress my career and make films. And I kind of told Justin, I was like, would you start mentoring me, towards a production designer, art directing role? And he said, totally. Like, we got off and became like famous friends after that meeting. And so they made a great offer, and it had terms, which I was like, great. This is, because my wife's about to move to LA, and the cats are in the bags. Let's go. Man.
You need that assurance.
I needed some assurance. Yeah. And then I turned to Disney, and, I was like, hey, remember how we never did the term sheet? Uh-oh. But thanks for everything. And don't worry, I'll stay on and finish the episode, or the 2 episodes we had to do. But I did leave early, but they were all very understanding and awesome. And that's what I learned. Sweet. A valuable lesson about especially the Los Angeles industry is like, it's a soup here. People are going in every direction and coming and going, and nobody's really getting bent out of shape of where people are going and the opportunities. And you probably need less. It's scary as a young artist to hear like, hey, you're good. Don't worry. You'll be fine. We're not going to just shut you down and toss you out on the street. It sounds terrifying, but the hip thing to do nowadays is that it's funny. When you're young, they don't want to give you any terms. When you move up, they want to give you terms. And then if you're a real hot top talent, you don't want terms again. So you have freedom.
So you go full circle.
And so I'm at Sony now. I've moved to LA. I got my apartment. The cats are here. Which I actually think I talk about in the course while we break down the design of Peter Parker's apartment, because I was living out of a box basically. And we're working on this film, and I get that feeling, and we get called into a meeting, and I'm just about to hop on a flight back to Oakland to like pack everything up. And like, I got 2 weeks to work from Oakland. Everything's going to get in a U-Haul, and we're going to drive down the coast to Los Angeles. It's sort of the dream moment, arriving in Hollywood with the truck full and ready to go. And I'm like, I have my suitcase with me. I'm going to the airport. You know what I mean? And we all get pulled in the meeting. Like, the movie is put on hiatus.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh man, like, what did I do? I could have kept the Disney job and we would be fine. Yeah. We had a year's worth of TV show to make. And they said, don't worry. Everyone's going to be fine. But they always say that. And you know what? Usually they're right. I'm just a paranoid person. And we'll get assignments for everybody. And they throw me onto Hotel Transylvania 3. And I'm like, great, as long as I've got a project. But
yeah.
there in the other building, there had been small group working on very hush Spider-Man film. And a couple months go by and I'm talking to that team more and more. And then there's a change of leadership, and Justin, who hired me, ends up taking over Spider-Man, and there has to be like a little bit of a reboot to happen. And he'd hired me and one other artist at the same time. And he was like, if I'm moving on to that project, let me bring my guys that I just hired with me. And they said, sure. And then, they sent me a copy of the script and we printed it up, and my wife read it to me while we drove the U-Haul. Drove the U-Haul down the 5, and like literally it's
how long was the drive?
It's like a 7-8 hour drive, especially in a big truck like that. You know, it's like a 20-foot truck, which I'm in my 30s now. I learned how to drive when I was 30. So this is, and I don't really drive much. And I was driving a little Volkswagen Golf Rabbit around. Now I'm driving a 20-foot truck. And it's hot as hell because you're in the Central Valley Desert. And my wife is reading me the Spider-Man script. And so we roll into LA basically as she's finishing the script. And then we were off and running. I started on Spider-Verse on the Monday, and the next 2 years of my life were probably the most exciting and most difficult, but I was so excited. Like I said, I get so pumped up that when things might have be grinding down some artists or getting to some people, or like it was absolute madness at times. I was just like, this is so cool. They're like, quick, we need a movie poster as fast as possible, and I'm like, oh, I couldn't care less. I was like, cool, I'm making a movie poster. This is the greatest thing ever. They got to do the art book cover. You'll have to do it after hours. I was like, who cares about hours? Let's do it. I was just so pumped. And it became, and then I met Chris Miller and Phil Lord and the incredible team of artists that worked on the movie. And I just couldn't be more excited. Like I was working all hours just because I couldn't like calm down. I'd go home thinking about, I was just in love. I was in love with the project. It felt, that was the time where I was like, it was more than relief. I was like,
I guess, would you say ever since when you started education and, doing even graffiti, and just working your ass off to get where you want to, I guess that was the moment you waited for, would you say? Like that kind of feeling, really like that kind of vibe you were in?
The big caper really like the biggest heist of my lifetime had just been completed, I felt like, because
it's a great way to put it, man.
Because I somehow finagled my way into a green card onto this film with an incredible crew. And they were like, does anybody know how to do graffiti? Because the main character is doing graffiti. And I was just like, it couldn't have been a better fit. And it felt like, and maybe, I'm sure there's people out there would say like, oh, that you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice to say that, it just sort of happened. And it didn't just happen. It was years and years of gravitating towards that. But then there's so much luck involved. And I feel so lucky and grateful for the opportunity and the opportunity, the chances people took on me, that I feel like it was a big heist, And I think that's where that people deal with that imposter syndrome. But
I'll get that a lot.
Yeah. But, maybe we are all imposters, and but think about yourself, you're not an imposter. You're like a cool spy guy or something. You've infiltrated and you've outsmarted a lot of them. That's, and ever since then, there was a very much like a rival of confidence where anything before that might have felt like I was faking the confidence or now, although I'm still very quick to doubt myself, there was a reassurance, like a huge reassurance of like, yep, I feel like I've made the right decisions, because you're always, and not just in art, but in life, making these decisions. And I find it can be very helpful when trying to make the decision to try to get some foresight and by looking at it with hindsight and projecting myself like way down the line in my career, doing an interview and telling this story saying, oh, and then I decided to give it all up and become a sea captain. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like it fits the narrative, but who knows? Maybe then I became a sea captain and found, the greatest art archives of all time. And now, that's a very interesting story then, so I try to, like, whilst making a decision, project myself in the future, looking back on the past. And if it's a story I feel comfortable telling, then it's probably the right decision. But there's no way to know. And we all write our own narratives and then take credit where it might not have been due. I made a genius calculation at this point in time to walk out of the job.
But I think, like the way you mentioned it, it's like we've all got a path to follow, and if you don't walk the path, then you will never know whether it's the right way or the wrong way. But even if you do take the wrong direction, you can course correct and just, I guess, keep going forward. But then obviously learn along the way the little lessons that need to be learned as well.
Yeah, and it's good to believe in yourself, even when you don't. Which I often don't. And I think people would accuse me of being overly confident at times, but it's really just like, it's a lot of front and just me being like, I've got nothing else to believe in but myself more often than not. Yeah. And so I'm really doubling down over here. And there was a time when I got to LA, kind of right after the movie was coming out, and the career then was skyrocketing. And I was like, boy, I had a thought where I was like, I really wasted a bunch of time because I was seeing some people younger than me, and you'll always see people younger than you or older than you, or different. Everyone's arriving at different times because they all start in different places. But
how old are you now, if I may ask?
I am 35 years old.
I'm a year younger than you, so.
Oh, jeez. one more piranha nipping at my heels. But I had this thought where I was like, boy, it wasn't like, oh, I wasted time. But it was like, had I just gotten down here earlier, could you only imagine where this career would be at now? But I was like, but if I came into senior on a Spider-Verse, I might have never ended up as an art director, because I came in as a biz dev artist, and just my excitement that I was talking about and my involvement and my passion for it led to a promotion eventually to become like the art director of environment design. And had I been senior and made a few movies, I might have taken some of the social cues that were there that I didn't see. Like, people who make a lot of movies start to understand things that aren't going to be, that part of the script, that's not going to be in the movie. And that part of the process isn't that important. To me, I was at 32. I was like just out of college again, I felt. I was like, I'll take any assignment. What's that needs to be designed? Oh, there's props that need to get designed. I'll bang out some props.
The window needs clean. Let's do it.
Let's clean it, and who's getting a drink after work? Because I want to keep talking about the movie, and hey, would you mind hey, producer, are you free to get lunch? I didn't know I'm not supposed to ask a producer to get lunch. But I'd be like, can we chat? Like, I wouldn't mind having a chat, I remember going into Justin's office one of the first days we were working together, and he's like, what's up? Do you need anything? I was like, nah, dude, I just want to chat. And I guess, I don't know, maybe production artists aren't supposed to go straight into the production designer's office unannounced and just say, hey, what are you up to? But I was just so pumped. And had I arrived earlier, my career would be in a different place. But now it's like, I wouldn't want to go back and trade anything for that I did, because I got to the place I was, I guess, supposed to get to, or I wanted to get to, or I would be uncomfortable trading it for something else.
Yeah.
And so I immediately dismissed that thought because I was like, no, well, first of all, I had a blast in Montreal because I got very close with my extended family again. And then in San Francisco, I reconnected with a great friend and met a lot of other great people and got a chance to work with the Lucas people and had a blast there and made great friends. And then I got down to LA, maybe what I've always considered behind schedule, but you could make the argument it was also right on time. And then, we made the movie. It won all the awards. I got to make some Marvel comic books. Then coronavirus happened. The world collapsed. I ordered extra sweatpants, and now we're having this podcast. So that kind of catches everybody up.
Yeah, man.
I remember when coronavirus started, and I was like, I need more sweatpants, and I ordered them.
Yeah.
And I got a thing from, I think it was Nike, being like, your sweatpants are delayed. It's going to take, 3 weeks.
Yeah, man.
And I was like, is there even going to still be a coronavirus in 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Am I going to be without sweatpants? Like, I'm not even going to get to use these sweatpants. And now we're on day 75, and I'm considering ordering more sweatpants.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird how it's like literally we're in the midpoint of the year. It still feels like the year's just begun and there's lots of shit to do. But here we are, half the year's gone. It's so weird. In terms of like...
It's crazy.
Work though, I mentioned this obviously before we started, or whoever's listening, we were speaking a little bit about this before we began the podcast. Obviously you're, in the thick of the industry. What is the vibe like around the industry now? I know you mentioned like in some productions it's early on, so it's not too affected, but are you hearing noises that, hey guys, this is how it's going to be going forward, get ready to adjust, or is that, what's the vibe like right now?
It's interesting. And for, now maybe I've lost that bit of radar because I'm living on high now. No, but I hope not. But I don't get the feeling I had, I've had many times where I'm like, the canary in the coal mine is dead. Like, we should get out of here, I hope everyone understands that reference, but, I don't have the feeling that there's like an industry collapse coming, which is great. And, as we discussed kind of offline, I'm like starting to consider like, is this the right time to settle down in LA and all that? And I've actually been asking, like, I asked the head of production of Sony Pictures and some producers, how are we doing? And they're like, well, we're going to be fine. The industry is going to be fine because the demand for content is through the roof.
Yeah, it's higher, isn't it?
Now. And so the animation industry seems very strong. Now, what we are noticing, of course, like every industry, is are the things that we can change about our practices that that would be beneficial. Like everyone's working from home. There's definitely road bumps. I would way rather have time in the studio, and a lot of our artists would would rather be in the studio, but there's some artists that are also flourishing at home and that's going really well. Or I have an artist, a great designer and painter, Yashar Kasai. He's working with us on the second film, and he's like me, and we found this same natural rhythm where I'll catch him online late at night still working, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? First of all, it's a union shop. You're not really supposed to be working overtime unless you're approved. He's like, I'm not working overtime. I break my day up differently now. I do, I might do my 6 hour day and then take some time off. And then I can come back at night once I've had time to digest. And I can do a little more work. And I'm like, oh man, I love doing that. I love having a few hours at the end of the day to just kind of take a second look at my work. There's no meetings. There's no rush. It's digested. I can get a look at it with fresh eyes, because fresh eyes are such a rare commodity in a long design hall, like making a film or a video game, because people have seen things so many times. You can't see it for the first time again. And of course, your audience, the world, if you're lucky, is going to, see it for the first time in its finished state. There's no adjustments to be made after. So you really want to make sure it's thoroughly thought out, but also that it reads on first viewing and then it is an instant get. And so Ishar and I had a conversation. It's like, boy, post-pandemic, what's the work week going to look like? Is it going to be, I love this concept of the majority of artists, if they want, they're not in tons and tons of meetings. They're mostly doing their job. I would love just 3 days a week they're in the studio. And for 2 out of 3 of those days, it's even like a half day, and they take their work home and kind of work on their schedule. I mean, a lot of artists work over the internet anyways, but I still love having a crew. And I think a lot of artists benefit from being around a crew because it's such an infectious learning environment.
Yep.
As well, you just get to share ideas. Like I'm using my wife now in the middle of the day. I'm like, come look at this. And I don't even need a trained eye to be looking at it. I just need somebody to react, and she's like, I love the blue, or I don't like that green. And I'm like, I actually do like the green. How much do I like the green? Do I like it enough to fight her on it? I guess I do. And so I'm doubling down on the green. Just little things like that. I find it valuable to have people around to test your ideas,
Wow. That's amazing. And I guess like maybe some of these ideas were floated around before, like, oh, how do we get our workplace more productive? Some people, obviously, like you mentioned, some people thrive at home. Some people thrive in the studio. But I guess this is an opportunity now to kind of enforce those. It's like what a lot of people are doing in a weird metaphor is doing a lot of DIY and house chores that they never did before because they were constantly working. But now they're at home, they can get that done. And I guess this is a bit of an opportunity to take stock of things and readjust, obviously for the better. Do you think it's too early to say what aspiring artists and students would maybe need to look at more in this changing industry now? Or is it still the classic, just work on your craft, work on being obviously a great professional, and just never give up?
I think there is one thing that is like, it is a good quality to have in any studio, and something I look for in any artist, but it's not mandatory, but it's become more valuable now, is communication, right? So much of the job is these vague asks. Their tasks can often be, they can be very broad and about getting an emotional reaction from an audience. And we're dealing with art, which can be fundamentally very abstract. And then it can swing to becoming completely idiosyncratic and precise. Move that there, make this blue. You're done. You're approved. It's done. And I feel like artists have generally always gotten a bit of a pass because they're artists and they're creative souls and all that stuff. So you get a very mixed bag of people in terms of communication. Some people are very quiet. Don't want to talk much. Some people are very boisterous and loud, like me and Justin, and over communicate. But the goal is to have good communication. And if this process is done, this quarantine has changed anything, is our ability to communicate. And you really need to make sure people are communicating and understanding what each other is saying. I kind of have this list now as an art director. I love lists, and I have this kind of method, list, process, whatever you want to call it, for when things aren't working out with an artist. And my first question is, did I communicate what the ask was?
Yeah.
So I'll go look at the emails. Okay, no, I asked for it right here. It says, a blue rectangle. Step 2, I talk to the artist and I say, so you know that blue rectangle we were talking about? And they're like, yep. And I'm like, and this is obviously a major oversimplification. Just the blue rectangle will be an easy visualization tool. Because really what you're talking about is more like, I need something that is aspirational, but is also somewhat confining. So it's just sort of the light at the end of the tunnel is the feeling I need missing. But we'll just talk about a blue rectangle. Mm-hmm. I'll go to the artist and say, you know, that blue rectangle we were talking about, what is blue to you, right? And let's discuss what a rectangle is. And if they're like, you know, well, this is blue, and they show me blue, and it's actually green, and they show me a rectangle, and it's actually a triangle, and say, I see the problem. We aren't the thing I'm asking for, the blue rectangle. You don't know what that is. I didn't explain it well enough, right? Or you're not educated on the subject of rectangles. You only know of triangles. And so I'm going to gather some reference, and we are going to discuss the blue rectangle and get you to get the artist clear on what the ask was. So now I've ensured that I actually asked for what we wanted, and they actually hear what I wanted. They understand what the ask is, right? Mm-hmm. And then if neither of that works, then there's a bigger problem and you have to talk with the artist. But usually that's kind of the last step there. And that is a lot of conversation and can be a lot of conversation, even if it's just a blue rectangle. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're talking, like I said, about these abstract concepts of like merging several different artist styles together while bringing something of your own in and designing something that fits into a story, that is a very complicated thing to do. And if people are prone to not a lot of communication or don't have great communication skills, aren't great listeners, but also good explainers of their own. Mm-hmm. It especially in this quarantine, because you're doing it all over video chats, it's hard to understand. I was speaking with Justin last night, and we were talking about this topic, and we kind of came up with this like harebrained theory that when you're alone in the room, even if you're on the video chat, your body doesn't do the same amount of physical communication because there's nobody around to absorb it. It's the difference between like being in a movie theater and the collective gasp as something happens or something funny happens. You don't gasp or laugh the same way while reading a book alone at home usually, because and our theory is like you need a social group around you to give that performance. You're all part of this performance. And so, because we were saying, it's tough to have all this communication online. And we're like, because sometimes the communication is so subtle. People might not want to say something negative or don't know what they want to say. But often when you put artwork up, you don't look at the artwork. You look at the person you are presenting it to, and you see, if they squint their eyes and turn a little bit, just as a gut reaction before they've even processed it. It's that first look we were talking about earlier. Yes. It's lost over the video chat. And I think it's because you're not in a room full of people. It's like an unconscious thing we've lost.
Just to interject on that. Again, I've been working in like sales, customer facing environment for like over 10 years, 12, 13 years, I think. And when I first started like getting into freelance and obviously remote working, that is something I've struggled with a lot. Even still today is like, I'm so used to just speaking to someone physically, obviously, your mannerisms, you get to pick up on, little cues and little things you say. Sometimes I said more in your expressions as opposed to what's actually coming out of your mouth. And I don't think I'll ever get used to it. Obviously, you get ways to cope with it and you always find a way around it. But I totally am with you on that, where you just explained about this new way of communicating and working in particular. Because obviously communicating is one thing, just for having a conversation. But when you're trying to do it for work, obviously as a professional and solving a problem, that's obviously another challenge in itself.
Yeah, and so I'd say, it's always, the advice to young artists is always like have a great attitude and have a great portfolio. One thing that seems to never be discussed is like how to communicate. Yes. And I think in this era where communication is really what's being strained in our industry because of our distance. I think it should be the responsibility of any artist out there to learn really how to listen and really then how to pitch their idea and express communicate what their intentions are. You know, we go into some of that in the course, just even how to like lay out a good contact sheet and making it easier for the art directors, producers, to see your work and review your work in a way that really sets you up for success. And it's not that it sets you up to get your idea approved. It sets you up to very clearly articulate what you are trying to say, both visually within the art and in the way in which you talk about it. And what I mean by success then is they fully understand what you're saying and give you accurate feedback because they know what they're looking at and what your intention is. And then they can give you feedback, which then you can take to go make a new round of artwork and the adjustments that possibly need to be made to ensure that, again, you're not making the greatest piece of artwork in the world, but you are making the movie or the video game or something better.
Yes, well put. And I think that's a great segue into the course itself. But I just want to take a bit of time out to mention just the Spider-Man film itself. Firstly, a huge congratulations and to the team and to anyone else involved on, firstly, just an amazing film, but also what it represents in terms of how it was made from an artist level, seeing that level of work done in that way with how I perceive to be a kind of freedom that you don't tend to see in many other films, even not just films, IPs in general. It's almost like a triumph and something to be proud of, to see that work and be successful and win awards. So firstly, congratulations on that. And congratulations on the awards. Did you actually get a chance to go to the Oscars?
I did not.
Okay.
That's slightly above my pay grade. There's a thing called the Emmy Awards, which is like the Oscars for the animation business. And a whole bunch of us, we mobbed up that place and we were the rowdiest folk in the building. And it was fantastic.
Where's the statue right now? Who's looking after it?
The directors all got one, as well as the producers, and then the studio receives one, and it actually sits in the studio for all to see. And actually, the day we got it, and it showed to the studio because I grabbed a Polaroid camera and loaded up with film, and I was just snapping pics of people with it and giving them the Polaroid. So I have a little Polaroid in my studio here at home, which is my Oscar.
Dude, that's amazing.
Or my, commemorating my involvement my small involvement in an unbelievable project with an unbelievable crew.
I mean, like, does it actually, I know you've probably spoken about this topic to death because, everyone's probably been asking you about it. But like, does it actually, has it sunk in terms of how big of a deal the film has been and the project has been? Or is it still something that you look back and thinking, wow, I can't believe I got to do this and it happened this way and, it's done what it's done? Or is there a different emotion entirely?
No, that's a great question. It certainly seems surreal, because the pace in which we made the project was hectic. It was. I absolutely loved it and wouldn't have traded it for anything. But boy, was it a lot of work. And then you kind of come out on the other end, and it was. And actually, the film ended, and I was one of the last people to get cut. The other art director and production designer were doing the DI, which is the final color correction on the film. Yeah, they didn't need me around, and that was it. I was cut. And I immediately hopped on a plane just to get out of town. I just needed a change. I hopped on a plane, picked up my older brother in Toronto. It's unbelievable. there is a plane, there is a flight that could, this is going to be a big segue, but there's a flight that goes from Los Angeles to Toronto to Newfoundland, Canada to Dublin, Ireland. And I went and picked up my brother. We had an 8-hour layover in Toronto, flew to Newfoundland, Ireland, where my father lives, said what's up, 8-hour layover, and got to Dublin. And then it was my first time ever traveling overseas. I never really got to travel before because I just worked my entire life and was always pretty broke. And so we went to the UK and we went to Amsterdam and Paris. And then I flew back for the wrap party. And about 2 weeks later, the movie came out, and that was December. And then I flew home for Christmas because I hadn't seen my family for Christmas forever. The movie came out. We all went and saw the movie. Yeah, we had the premiere in LA, and then the movie came out, and the world around the Spider-Verse just exploded. And we were so grateful, and again relieved that people accepted it for what it was, and they enjoyed it. So I flew back to Toronto, and this is getting personal, but I flew back to Toronto. This isn't about the film at large, but my experience, and flew back to Toronto. I had bought like 30 movie tickets, and all my friends and family in Toronto wanted to see the movie. So we all went and did that, had a bit of a party after. And then the award season is, the movie came out during award season. So it started to get all these accolades doing very well, and came back to LA in the new year. I was doing all the DVD covers and stuff, kind of like, and then a lot of the crew was either on other projects, or the production designer and another art director, they were taking their very well-deserved time off. So I was kind of alone in the studio doing this stuff, and it just, the momentum kind of builds and builds and builds, but my capacity to have a grasp around what the effect of it was, the cup had overflowed. There was no more room in my understanding for what the movie was or meant to people. And because the volume was just so loud of everybody's opinion and of the film. And so it sort of just stalls out after a while. And I read a quote around then, and this is, I'm not in any way comparing myself to this individual, but I got a glimpse of it. Spielberg said somewhere, and I'll butcher the quote, but I was just reading an article that he wrote, whatever, just in passing. And he was saying, I never really got to I didn't get to see E.T. I'm not part of, or Jaws, that cultural movement, right? Because to me, my films represent something else, because the story of the movie, there's the story of the film, and then there's the story of making it, and it's not to say that it was contentious or anything like that. It's just, there's just another narrative wrapped up. And as everybody knows, there's multiple cuts of movies and different scenes and characters come and go. And so I probably have a worse memory for the movie than somebody who's seen it, because I'm like, one of our characters had a different name in production at one point in time, and still people use the wrong name.
Yeah.
But that's what everyone knows. So, you know what I mean? And so, again, I'm not comparing myself to Spielberg, but I kind of just felt for a moment what he was saying, because it was the movie means something different to me than it does, and to all the people who created it, and were involved in it, probably something different than how it was received publicly and culturally and all that. But we were so excited, and we're blessed that it was accepted and enjoyed by so many people. And the one thing that's weird is people like to give their appreciation, which I totally understand. And I'm a fan of a lot of things as well, but you might end up being somewhere and being the representation of a thing that somebody really enjoyed, even though you're just a small part of it. And that can be a weird feeling. That's where that imposter syndrome creeps back in, because somebody will say, I absolutely loved the thing you made, and I want to thank you so much. And you're kind of left with this feeling where I understand that this person wants to show their respect for this thing and their appreciation for this thing. And it is making them actually feel good to say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to say, I met the so-and-so of the thing. I met the bass player of the band. And so you don't want to take that away from them, but you also feel weird accepting the praise for the accolades of 1,000 people.
Interesting.
And so you kind of just nod your head and say, I think I've resolved to just sort of say, thanks. It's a group effort, you could kind of subtly correct them. I love the thing you made, and you're like, thank you. The entire team, worked tirelessly, and they're like, it's so cool to meet you. And it's like, I can't say enough about how everybody really did their part, because it's true. We were every individual is very significant compared to the whole. And so that's, I know we're on a tangent here, but that's sort of,
brilliant.
Is an interesting side experience to this whole thing. It's unbelievably humbling because you are cast into the spotlight by the masses. Everybody who worked on it has had their moment in the spotlight of whatever their platform, even from their family at a family dinner, if they all went and saw the movie or something like that. But everybody who made it, you couldn't have done it with all of them. And so there's a bit of like almost a touch of guilt accepting the praise, but then you want people to be able to enjoy the fact that they enjoyed it and express their happiness about it, their gratitude towards it with somebody who was involved in the creation of it.
And I think it's very important that you highlight that, because again, even with like award shows and Oscars and stuff, it's all concentrated on a select individual or a small collective. But it is pretty much, when you look at like behind the scenes and things like that, and even if you just sit there and watch the credits, you just see the enormous amount of people involved.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's, and I think the way, again, how you've spoken about how you tackled the project and what the experience was like, it definitely was like a team game. And it's awesome to hear that, like, you definitely appreciate that aspect of it as well.
When those credits roll, after having made a movie like that, and I see how small some names are, they're all the same size, but you see a person's name who, is just 10 characters in a wall of names.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh man, she was she deserves more, because that person, and him over there and her over there, they saved my ass all the time, or they did brilliant work, or they had that really smart breakthrough,
Yeah.
And that's just me, right? The other art director, he has a bunch of names. Everybody has all these names. They can pick out these names of people that were absolute rock stars, and there's their name. And Justin Thompson said this brilliant thing to me, and he probably knew I needed to hear it at one point in time. And it's definitely his ethos while working, in terms of like getting praise or rewarded, is everyone who needs to know what you did knows what you did. You don't have to go around bragging about it or boasting or feeling like I'm not getting the recognition for the part I played. Yeah. Everybody who needs to know, who can actually do something with that information, knows. Wow. And that's really kind of reassuring to, first of all, even if it's not true, let's say, it's a great way to live your life, because it doesn't have you looking over your shoulder to make sure somebody is seeing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But in fact, it is, in my experience, it is true. Those little names up there that made a huge difference are getting the accolade and praise that they deserve. Yeah, and they probably deserve even more.
And I think that's a brilliant way to put it. Cool. Let's let's touch upon your awesome course, 2D sequence illustration. What is sequence illustration for those that don't know?
Yeah. Sequence illustration. Sequence illustration is this term that we use to describe a piece of artwork, because we kind of have to categorize all the different types of artwork, because of course it's a production. We're not just sitting around making artwork, and we need an idea of what's the hierarchy of artwork, how much time does artwork take, and all that stuff. So this is a term that is assigned to a piece of artwork that accomplishes a lot of things, and is sort of this can be the creme de la creme, or this is the final presentation. These are the big pieces, these are the concept art book pieces kind of thing. And it's because what they do is they accomplish a lot of things. They capture a moment in the story is the biggest, they're probably the most important thing that they do is they capture in one image what a moment of the story is, or a feeling of the story. It gives you, it's like a still frame of the film that will tell you either what the entire film is about, what emotionally you should expect to be feeling, or it can be for a sequence itself, which is usually what it is, for a sequence in the film, Miles rises up, or the bank heist begins, it should sell that image. But it's then, once you start peeling those layers back, as we talked about earlier, it's doing more than that. It's offering up design ideas and decisions. Usually they aren't final, but it's somewhere in the process. We've done some designs. There's still more design to do, but this is pretty much what the character is going to look like. This is the car he's going to drive. This is the weapon she's going to wield. And so it does a lot of that design work as well. And then it also can express the type of lighting that you're going to see in this scene. And so it can end up becoming this, and more often than not, it can be the color direction, the lighting direction for that particular shot. Sometimes your sequence illustration will turn into a literal shot in the movie. And so it does the design, it does the lighting, it does the color, it tells the story, it tells the mood. It can also even, especially in animation, which is a medium that doesn't have a set style, the other thing it's accomplishing is what we've now come to refer to as the render script, which is really what we mean by that is, what does the actual rendering look like? There's many different ways to paint a blue rectangle, right? Is it going to be smooth gradients? Is it going to be hatch lines? Is it going to be this graphic simplification that we used in Spider-Verse with comic book overtones? And so it has to accomplish that as well. So it's kind of the whole package, and it's something that I've kind of done my whole career, and always seems to be this thing that artists aspire to be able to do, because it is juggling all these balls at once. And it seems to be something that's not generally taught. And so this felt like a good opportunity, because it's something I've noticed over the last few years. More and more artists around me and students want to discuss the topic and find success in the creation of the sequence illustration. And so this is an opportunity to sort of this is my catch-all. I can now just send people to the class when they want an explanation. And that's really what it is. It's just me going through the creation of a sequence illustration.
Brilliant. I mean, I've had a chance to watch a couple of lessons so far. I'm definitely going to complete the whole thing when I get a chance. But even when we was promoting it, I was doing some of the promotional stuff, and I got to even without the context in a certain extent, just go through the PSD, or the final image, And even then just going through the certain layers and thinking, oh, okay, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's a really neat way to solve that kind of problem. But one thing, and obviously how you've mentioned pretty much for the whole podcast, is the key takeaway I get from the essence of this course is how to solve that visual problem or that question that's been asked to solve. And even from like my perspective as the level I'm at as an artist, that is one element that lacks in my pieces. And this is like the perfect puzzle piece to literally plonk that in there. So, and even seeing some of the work that's coming out so far, so I think it's only 2 weeks this week. The course has been out, I believe. So. And even seeing how people are tackling it is great. And another thing as well that I'd like to mention is it's very digestible. There's some topics that do take a lot of time to digest and practice, but you clearly can tell with your experience and the level you've done it at, the way you explain it is excellent.
Yeah, and thank you. And there's kind of two things that come to mind there. Is overall, I mean, my goal, all this class is it's two things. It's my process. I talk about process all the time. Yeah. And I find a freedom in process, I find a freedom in organization. If I know what my process is going to be, Americans are going to go nuts because I think they say process. How do they say it there? You say process, right?
Yeah, we say process.
Yeah, American. I say the word process a lot. It drives people nuts. It's like I spell the word color as any people of like English descent will know. The proper way to spell colors with a U. But in America they drop the U, and I write the word color a lot. And I've come into the dictionaries of my phone, and I mean I have my dictionary on my phone set to Canadian English, so I get that U in there.
Like when I first started Learn Squared, a lot of the stuff, the copy I was writing was obviously like in British English. So a lot of it was like the mannerisms over here, and it took me a while to kind of like align with the US way of doing things. So yeah, I can relate.
Yeah, I just flat out refuse. But we digress. So in process, I find a lot of freedom because I have the steps figured out. You know, I know what I need to do and what I need to do next now. I know how to do what I need to do. So I need to make a painting. I need to design it. I need to sketch it. I got to do this. I got to do this. And I walk through the process through several, I think at the start of each class, we're in this step of the process. Yep. Knowing what step of the process I'm in, so I know what I have to be doing, is I got to render, or I have to it allows me a creative freedom because this is the space I need to play in now. And that I have set some limitations, and it allows me to then just be completely free and creative as I want, because I know the process is it's a shorthand. It's a muscle memory. I'm not going to get lost in my painting. I'm not going to break my painting. I'm not going to, and if I do and something's wrong, I can go back into my process and say, okay, well, the lighting's good. So that's not what it is. And that's why the Photoshop files are kind of layered that way. So I can walk my way through my process, and I can say, well, the lighting looks good. So it's not the lighting that's screwing it up here. What about the texturing? Is it the texturing? No, the texturing looks fine too. And then I'll peel that layer off, and then I'll say, oh, this is not a good design. That's what it is. Now it's kind of surviving because let's go back one more step. The composition. Okay, the composition's good. There's something wrong with the design here because the texturing is working, the lighting's working. I'm about to finish rendering, which is like the last video where you put all the bells and whistles on. I got to go back and fix this design because now I'm just like polishing a turret. I'm letting bad design survive because of good lighting. And I found the problem. I have to fix the design. So I go and I'll fix the design and then add the texture and the lighting back on. Okay, this works. So the process allows me a freedom to understand what my painting is or it gives me the ability to understand what my painting is, which allows me, for some reason, this then freedom. It's like the constraints give me the freedom to be truly creative because I'm not concerned with how to make the painting, but what the painting is going to be.
Nice.
Becomes my concern. So the other thing we do in the class though is, so that's happening. And then what I'm, in a sneaky way trying to do is, so I've peppered in a bunch of things that kind of drive me nuts as an artist and now as an art director is like, I would prefer if people, they don't have to present work in my way, but that they were, like we've talked about, good at communicating and presenting their work. So we wrap up each class with like, okay, here, if you were now done this phase and going to hand it to the art director, this is kind of how, at least myself as a real life art director would, like to see it. And then we even talk about that same sort of professionalism. And that's what these are. There's this little, my opinion on these little professionalisms. Even the Photoshop file is organized in a way because, you're not just some artist painting in the woods. And it should be mentioned, this class is for people who want to work in the industry. Sequence illustration is not a hobby. It's something you do as part of a production. So this is about learning how to do that for a job. Now it's still, I think there's good stuff for the hobbyist out there, but it's, the barrier to entry is very low, but this is about, learning how to do a particular task, which I absolutely love doing, but it is, there's professionalisms within this. And one of them is you don't own this painting. And even if you do, other people are going to probably need to interact with it, especially if you want your painting to end up on screen. Just like I said, show your work in a way to make sure everyone understands it, pass off your work in a way that makes it more useful for everybody. So even just the way to organize your Photoshop file and make sure that if a matte painter needs this, if we run short on time and they're not actually going to build this set, but make a matte painting, I've organized the painting in a way that they could just 3D project that onto some geometry and oops, now my actual painting is on screen for a movie or a video
thinking
game.
Of like the bigger picture.
Being aware of the fact that you are working in a studio setting and being aware of where you are in the pipeline and how to make yourself the most useful and valuable. It's kind of, we touched on that earlier. Like, how do you find value? There's a lot of value to the person who hands over great paintings that are very usable by other departments. Oh, they can just go pull the texture right out of your painting because you put the lighting over top. Oh man, that just saved the production a bunch of time. And that's time then we can use on something else.
Sick. For students that want to take the course, but are still starting out, because we do get a lot of questions, and I've noticed a lot of people ask a lot of the time, like, what do they need or level to be at to start the course? And obviously, we already mentioned, and I think all of our courses are built so it can be accessible to any level. But would you advise students to focus on a particular area of art or design before they take the course? Basically, something to prep themselves with before they start the course.
Sure. I think the barrier to entry is, I think, very low on this class, even compared to the other Learn Squared classes, because the only software we use is Photoshop. And I do a little segment with a couple Photoshop tricks, but we're using it just like it's pretty much paint with a computer attached. And any of the concepts or technical requirements we really go into, and it's only about 20 minutes of it because it's some pretty lazy basic stuff. So familiarity with Photoshop would be great, but I do the same paintings in Procreate or something like that.
Yeah, it's easy transferable.
You could do it with straight up paint, but there's a couple tricks that I'll show you to make your life easier in Photoshop as opposed to painting. So from a technical aspect, it's really just, you'll want some sort of tablet interface, like a Cintiq or an iPad or something, and then you'll want the software. In terms of the like artistic skills, I think somebody who has, it's definitely not for the advanced. It's for kind of for all ages. But it's, a bit of an understanding of drawing and painting skills. If you've done like high school, college painting, or taken a class on drawing and painting, it'll be beneficial. Now, the more you know, the more you'll probably get out of the class. Mm-hmm. But what we do in the class is we start with just the basic compositions, black and white, very blocky, kind of ugly, but graphic design. We're just focused on composition. And we build those, we start from there and we build them up, and we go through the process that you would find in a lot of animation studios. That's required of animation studios. We go from a black and white composition, that's just a little thumbnail, we call them comps, to a color key where we color that black and white. We select some of those black and whites and we develop them into color keys, which is when the powers that be on the film would all get their heads together and decide, well, what color and lighting is the sequence? And then we take one of those and develop it all the way through to the end of doing a sequence illustration. And there's a lot of value, I think, for people who would consider themselves not great at drawing and painting yet, to do it, because what you really want to do is, as an artist, as anybody learning any trade, is just do it as many times as possible. It's not about starting a lot of paintings. It's about starting, middle, and end of a lot of paintings. You're going to need to learn how to get good at starting paintings. You're going to need to get good at that middle part, that heavy middle part of rendering and going and solving all the little problems that pop up in paintings. And then you're going to need to get good at finishing paintings and then presenting paintings. So it's good because even if you don't do great work, it's going to force you through the pipeline, and you're going to come back out, and then you don't need to take the course again, but I think you have lifetime access to it. But then you do it, the process again, and you do it again and again and again. And you don't just do the first step again, you do all the steps again. Yeah. So you're just as good at finishing as you are at starting.
And I think that actually answers the final question is, what would you like to see students take away from the course, or what would you like the legacy to be of the course after students have taken it?
Yeah, I mean, we segue into like a bunch of fun little tips and tricks and terms and stuff. So you get a good look at what passing on some of the knowledge that I've acquired from other people as well, and digested it and made my own. And now I pass it on to those that are looking to learn more. You'll get a bit of a taste of what it's like to work through a professional studio pipeline. There's many different ways to do it. And then, but my real hope would be this, that the long-term goal of this would be that artists take it or hear about it or whatever, however they do it. My real goal is, I've found such freedom and like liberation in having a process. And I think that's really what I want to instill as people is, and the course shows you one way, and you can rip off as much of it as you want and add your own details and make that your process. But I found such liberation in having a process, and I used to frustrate me so much when the process came out of the frustrations of making bad art. And so the process gives me peace of mind and makes me more creative. And it also, it allows me to break my process. I can consciously now do things a different way to very predictably get a different result. And so there is just a freedom in knowing kind of what you're doing. And that's really the thinking I'm trying to impart on people is now go find a way that makes it enjoyable for you to make artwork. And that's where the creativity will come from, is not fighting the ability to draw and paint or what a painting needs to be. But then only when that's out of the way, in my opinion, can then you can use all your energy for the creativity of it and the storytelling of it. Because you're not using like background processing power to run the operating system. The operating system is running smoothly. Now let's do something fun with this, machine.
Dude, that is a great way to put it, and I think a great way to end the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and spending your time.
Thank you.
Even your insight, I think your journey and your approach is amazing to see the journey you went on, and definitely energy towards your craft is infectious. I'm definitely walking away today super inspired from listening to your journey. So yeah, thank you very much. And if you haven't taken the course already, please do. The first lesson's free, so you can just check that out. But I'm pretty sure you're going to want to grab the rest. And if you are, that's it. I guess we can end it there.
And I was just going to say, I like to vet things before I purchase them. I'm the guy who reads the review, goes into the Best Buy, looks at the thing, asks a buddy, did you buy this? Is it good? So it's tough with online. That's why I never buy clothes online, because I can never feel, And so I encourage anybody out there who's thinking of buying the course, but that has some questions, reach out. Learn Squared has been great on social media, responding to people if they have questions. And I'm on social media as well and try to respond to everybody as well. But, if you're considering it and holding back for a reason, or just have any questions in general, feel free to ask, because it's definitely, in these trying times, it's a couple of bucks, and everybody needs to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. And so you should make sure that you're really getting the thing you want. And we're here to answer any questions that may be asked.
That brings this episode to a close. A big thanks to Patrick for being an awesome guest. His course, 2D Sequence Illustration, is available right now on learnsquared.com. Don't forget, the first lesson is free, so a great chance to try before you buy. Also, please check out the links in the show notes and give Patrick a follow on your desired social media platform. Till next time.